Welcome everyone, I'm Michael Dehaan, co-founder and financial wellness leader at Quantum Leap Global. I've got Elinor Moshe with me today. How are you, Elinor?
I'm excellent, Michael. Thank you for having me on your show.
Pleasure. And I reached out to Elinor. I was introduced to you from a close friend of ours, and I was talking about our Women's Empowerment series, which you've kindly come on, and it's around using your voice and visibility in the storytelling side. And we talked about it last week, and you just said, I'm in. I'm on. Where do we go with this? So I'm very grateful for that, because as I said, that's people that have been through that journey and sort of the legacy of the storytelling for young women in regard to supporting their pathway. So thank you for that.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And just by way of introduction, so Elinor's the founder of the Construction Coach. So you've been doing that for close to 3 years?
Time certainly flies. Yes, I remember launching just a website and just a blog and playing small on the 5th of May 2019, and certainly for a very long time I had no idea what I was doing, but I allowed myself to be a beginner, and that's how we get to end up where we are today.
Yeah, but you're really a trailblazer, because you're the first Australian construction coach, so that's real trailblazer.
That's right. And you know, the irony is to some extent that I don't teach typical construction. I don't focus on the build process. I don't focus on materials or any of that. My focus is on the people behind the projects, and not even from a tactical, technical sense, but going truly within. And no one has been doing this. And when I realized that, first of all, I had this glaring omission in my development, then others must too. I realized that when we're looking at construction, it's not just of buildings, but of course it is of ourselves. And that's how the business started to evolve.
Wow. Yeah. And that's a very sort of masculine sort of industry. But I think that sort of leadership, and I think where we're going to go with this, that's across all industries.
Certainly is. And, you know, so we were talking about the gender narrative to some extent last week, and it was actually when I fell into the gender narrative, which is when I had the least amount of opportunities. Because as we were again talking about last week when we met, that when it comes to potential, when it comes to creation, there is no gender associated with that. And what happens when people fall into a narrative or a belief system that doesn't actually serve them, it holds them back. And I was that person. There was this set of unchallenged beliefs that says, you can't be enough, you won't have enough, you can't get a seat at the table, you can't, you don't. And it presented everyone as a statistic. And then I looked at that, and then I slowly discovered the entrepreneurial world, and I realized that these statistics were only relevant to one type of career. They were not relevant to when you put yourself in a position where you create, where you decide, where you take 100% ownership of your career. And that's what started to shift the game for me, where I stopped positioning myself as a victim and actually said, okay, this is what I want to achieve. What do I need to do? Who do I need to be in order to have this for myself? And that's how I started also shifting my own game and shifting my own narrative, is that I'm not a statistic. I'm not lesser than. I cannot change the gender part. I am more than a gender. What else can I do? And this is relevant to not just the gender narrative, but every narrative. If you internalize external beliefs that don't serve you. I mean, you're very familiar with money ones. That's probably the most prevalent. You know, there's not enough money. Money is the root of all evil, all of that.
Yeah.
People have this as their belief system, but it's not serving them.
Exactly. And that's really well said. And I think a part of what I do, as you just shared, is that I'm sort of big on being a service to women in regard to that financial independence. So again, that societal conditioning and norm where the general roles are that the women are the carers, and then that can lead to a dependency. So then we're looking at really creating that financial independence where they can make choices and freedom for themselves there. But then we look at, so what does that mean in regard to a career? And we then go into potentially the corporate world.
That's fine. Yeah.
But what I'm, I suppose, leading to there is that because they might go in with their own identity or being authentic, and then when you look at that sort of patriarchal system in regard to if they want to go ahead and be successful, then they might start sort of going down that pathway of adopting male traits that maybe isn't authentic to themselves. And in regard to, as I said, belong, career progression, leadership, but then they start losing themselves.
That sounds very familiar.
So on one hand, and then there's potentially that burnout, or there's sort of health issues, or there's just that, as I said, I'm just lost. That's the culture of the business there. There's not that alignment. I think we've seen a real awakening. Whether there's COVID, there's a lot of women in a global sense, and my wife was one of them that really got off that sort of autopilot programs, took a step back and just said, what am I creating? What's my impact? What's my purpose? So I'd be interested in what you're sort of seeing, especially in this industry, around a sort of culture in the businesses to provide that inclusion, to provide that diversity, and whether you're seeing that evolving in a sense there where women truly belong, feel safe, and are able to speak up and not be judged in a sense.
Good question. And when we look at culture, what is culture? Culture has the word cult in it, if anyone hasn't noticed. And what is a cult? A cult is a set of group thoughts and group think, and we all do the same thing and go the same way, and we eat the same thing, and we have to dress the same. And that's what happens in corporate. It's not corporate's fault. It's the fault of the individual who allows themselves to get lost within the system. And that's exactly, you're talking about authenticity. That's exactly what happened to me. It was like waves hitting the cliff shore, that I lost myself at 95%. I had just 5% left of me to save me.
Wow.
But I was looking at everything around me and saying, oh, okay, these are the people in upper echelons. I need to be like them.
Yeah.
And then you end up being this chameleon. It's like, oh, new person, then that person has influence. Oh, this person said it's really good to do this. And then you just adapt and adapt and adapt. And that's how you lose yourself. And if you lose yourself, male or female, if you lose yourself, you lose it all. And this is the trap that happens within the industry, is that people see a majority of people who literally dress the same, not look the same, eat the same, have the same habits, all of a sudden have the same lifestyle habits. And then they see, oh, if I want to succeed in corporate, then I need to be like everyone else. But it's actually the opposite. You have more power if you differentiate based on all of who you are. And whether it's male or female, but women especially, is that you can only be what you can see. And when people see that as that leadership or execs and entrepreneurs only look a certain way, then they end up emulating that, but they're losing themselves. And this is where people actually start to regress in their own career. And that's not a bad thing necessarily, because like your wife and like me, it made me stop and pause and say, hang on, I'm not in control here anymore. Who am I? I was also someone who, once upon a time, I couldn't answer the question of what do you want? Now, if I get asked that question, I have to ask the person, how much time do you have? Because it's quite an extensive list.
Well done.
And vision as well. But that is what certainly does perpetuate in corporate. And it's always up to the individual to make sure that they know who they are, what they're here to do, what they want as well, because no one in corporate wakes up and says, you know what, Elinor's career, I'm going to make this the best career that there ever was. Not your HR department, not your managers, not your bosses. I mean, fundamentally, people operate out of a modality of fear. And when someone is operating out of a modality of fear, a modality of lack, they're only concerned with themselves. They're not waking up concerned with how they can positively impact other people. So that's a part of the culture, the sense of conformity. And when people don't know who they are, they have no backbone for themselves. So they'll very quickly conform in order to fit in. I mean, it's a natural human instinct to be liked to be around people who they like you and whatnot, but that has its severely detrimental effects. And I akin society to be like crabs in a bucket. When someone does try and stand up and stand out for themselves and do something different, they all try to pull you back in like crabs in a bucket. Not a great visual, but this is a society we found ourselves. So if we're looking at culture and the collective mindset, I mean, people are not aligned within themselves. They don't have mastery of self. They don't have mastery of the high impact and high income skills. They have an over-reliance of technical skills. People don't actually understand the rules of the game so they can win at the game. And as my mentor, Ron Malhotra, says, they're not trained to read the scoreboard. I mean, people aspire to career success, whatever success means for them, but they don't know the laws and the principles when it comes to success. They're not versed, they're not trained how to play the game. So we have this large pool of lower tier professionals who are unsatisfied, they're unfulfilled, they do not have holistic success, meaning every single house within their life is fulfilled, and they're certainly not building the high income skills in order to achieve that financial, if it's security, independence, whatever they actually want. And this is what I'm truly passionate about as well, is what are people actually doing of their own accord in order to change this for themselves, because they're just relying on externalities in order to fix that. But newsflash, no one's coming to save you.
Yeah, and isn't that a great point, that we look externally and really that sort of reflection internally, who are you? You know, really understanding your feelings, your emotions, and I call it bringing your whole self to life, but whole self to work as well. So and a lot of people, for whatever reason, have lost that, or there's a disconnect in a sense there. So I think your reflection on that and what you just shared was so valuable. So I appreciate that.
And just on bringing the whole self to work, if you were all of who you are and you put yourself in a field where 90% of people don't, there's a lot of friction.
Yeah.
And I've experienced that as well. All of a sudden, you find the corporate environment to be suffocating. And that's what also continuously propels you to know that, look, I have to build something of my own accord, because people, most people in corporate, because they don't know who they are, they get very easily intimidated by people who do present themselves in a far more authentic and congruent manner. Now, I'm not advocating that everyone should go out and become an entrepreneur. No, of course not. It is not the path for everyone, but neither is employment. And it's not that you should be one or the other. There's no one who can tell you that, only you can, but you can't think like an employee. It is too expensive of a habit and a way of being.
Yeah, no, I think that's a real valid point. I'm going to put out there in regard to this, I suppose, a shift in regard to conscious leadership. Because again, and that's not whether you're a male or a female, it's the blending the traits to have a sort of a balanced approach there, a true leadership style, which is inclusive, which is still focused on building a business per se, but it brings both of the qualities together as in one person, as an example. And at the moment, I still think, and you shared that you'll be judged on that. But there seems like there's a swell in regard to businesses, corporates going down this pathway or trying to understand it. So there's a little bit of light. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, what's the opposite of conscious? Unconscious? Do we want unconscious leadership? Of course not. I mean, how detrimental is that? And this is the first line of my book, Leadership in Construction, and it all starts and ends with leadership. And the reason that the industries, not just the construction, but industries on a personal and a macro and micro level, that people are experiencing the problems and issues that they are, is because they're not exercising leadership on any front. They are unconscious that of their impact and their effect in a given situation. Event plus response equals the outcome. People are aware of the event, but they're not actually aware of their own response. So absolutely, we should all have a higher level of consciousness. And I know consciousness and conscious leadership, same, but different, but of course we should. because as leaders, you cannot lead someone from the same consciousness that they are on. You cannot lead someone from the same awareness that we are on. For example, Michael, if we knew the same thing about money, and we don't, not my, I'm not I'm not trained in finances or whatnot, but
Sure.
if we knew the same thing, I wouldn't allow you to lead me, because
Yeah.
you don't know more than me. You don't have more insight than me.
Yeah.
But because you do have the authority and you have earned the right to lead. Now that's taking the consciousness part. So, if someone does truly want to step into the leadership function, they should always be looking to raise their own consciousness. And that in turn increases their conscious awareness, so that when you are in situations, you can read the room, you can see insights, you know how to positively influence the psychology of your followers so that there's win-win outcomes.
Yeah.
And there should be the status quo. I mean, quite frankly, we shouldn't be talking about this. But what we actually see is the opposite. Unconscious leadership is people who have too many blind spots. They're not actually aware of their own self. They're not aware of the impact that they're having on other people. And then, of course, this translates into negative business repercussions.
Yeah.
And the problems just keep on cycling and perpetuating. And this is why, as a leader, you're always under development. You're always under construction. If I'm not constantly working on my own self, then how can I actually lead others? Especially as they keep on growing, I need to keep on growing. And what I think we are finding is that traditional and tactical leadership approaches have incredible blind spots. They might work when things are good, but what about when things are not? This is when leadership and character is actually on display. And we're finding that most people who have been trained through traditional and tactical leadership type of training and development, they're not adequately versed when the seas get rough. And would I love to see a huge shift in consciousness? Of course, but it takes one person at a time.
Yes. Yeah. And I think you said that.
I hope that answers your question.
It doesn't. It sort of created another thought in my mind in regard to, I suppose, that continual learning, but it's the internal work, the continuous internal work to achieve that. And that I'd be interested in. So a young woman looking to go down that corporate pathway or upskilling in certain different industries, maybe before they start their own business. So when we talk about that really continual development, what sort of advice would you give them, or what?
Good question. Well, most people, Michael, as you may know from finances, I mean, financial education, what you're doing, you start with the mindset, you start with the energetic side of things. You're not probably teaching someone, okay, you want to, increase your wealth. Great. Here's a balance sheet or something. You can't start with that. And this is how most people choose to start their development. Oh, I need to grow. Okay, I need another technical skill. You already have a whole host of technical skills that have got a new X outcome. Why are we doing more of that?
Yeah.
They're not the skills that after a certain point in your career are actually going to give you the greatest quantum leaps moving forward. And this is one of the number one things that in the construction industry, pun intended, people are building their own ceiling for themselves. Yeah. So as a young person, if you're looking, okay, I do want to progress, I do want to develop. First of all, you don't know what skill set you need until you know what mindset you have. So it comes down to, what do you actually want? And this is exactly what you're saying before, is people are trained to look outside of themselves. Oh, I should go find a course, and that course needs to tell me what I want. Yeah. No, you need to look in here, the hardest place to look, which is in here. And then say, what do I want? What is it that I dream for myself? What is it that I aspire for myself? And yes, as a young person, to do that outside of all the societal conditionings of you have to go to uni and you have to do this and you have to. Yeah. It takes a lot of conviction from a young person to do that, but it's been done before. There's some people in their 18, early 20s. I have clients in early 20s. They're doing great things because they learn to look within first and not outside first. So that's where I would recommend that they start, because the number one thing that you have to master in order to master anything else is mastery of self. And that's where the development pathway certainly needs to start. And that starts with the mindset. So it's your belief system, it's your paradigms, it's your values, it's how you see yourself. It's knowing how your conscious and your subconscious mind actually works. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense that the most influential aspect of our life is barred and hidden from us, and we have to find it ourselves. And that raises a whole host of questions within itself, but that is truly where people need to start. Otherwise, they just end up locking themselves into mediocrity, and they just keep on playing the same small game that everyone else is playing without getting the rewards. They, people do truly think that, what, if I just do what everyone else is doing, but because it's me, it'll be different and I'll get a different outcome. It doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work. It's just so powerful what you just shared around doing that internal work, and that's really understanding your true essence. Everyone's amazing. Everyone was born with an essence to be brilliant, and understanding those strengths there and following that pathway intentionally and with passion. And it's the first time I've sort of heard it just explained in such a way there that people will watch this and going, that continual investment in myself, where, as I said, they were just going, I'll go to uni, I'll go into corporate, they'll put me on 10 courses, I'm going to be the best leader ever invented. But they're all their potential limiting beliefs or limiting sort of programs, I should say, that will keep people at a certain paradigm. So that was really powerful.
Thank you, Michael. And that investment in self, I was thinking about this last night, is that most people will aspire to buy a Yves Saint Laurent bag rather than invest in their mindset and skill set and surround themselves with experts. And it simply just doesn't make financial sense. And it doesn't make, I'm not saying don't have the nice things, but there's so much that needs to happen before you can have all these material things that are a reflection of your mindset and skill set. And people will say, you know what, yes, I'll save up and $2,500 for a bag. But I don't hear people say, you know what, I'm going to save up so that I can do that course. And that is a big flaw in how society shapes people to chase externalities rather than look in here.
Yeah, and it's even that sort of reward. So, I'll do this, I get a handbag. It's a physical thing, it's material. So that sort of reward there, I saved it up, where investing in a course that's changing your mindset. It's doing the inner work there. So you got to believe in yourself that's an outcome that's going to change your future.
Exactly.
I
can hold it. Yeah. And when, you can't hold a mindset course, you can't show off your mindset course to your friends, but over the long term, then you certainly can. But again, people are truly locked into a present bias, and again, that lack mentality, where they're not even allowing themselves that opportunity to explore and to invest in themselves and to develop on that front.
Yes. And with your book, I believe it's, am I going to say it's launched, or is it
2 weeks?
Oh, that's exciting, because this is all about the stories that you shared with me and other things I'd imagine. But so I'm looking forward to reading it there. But what would that sort of support people that they're not in leadership but are looking at leadership skills? Again, this is this internal work, this investment in self.
Certainly. And I'm on the phone to Karen just about every day. Are we good? Are we good? It, launches soon, but Karen McDermott, for those watching, she's our publisher and our mutual connection, and is an absolute powerhouse of a woman, and she can make magic happen. So I have all confidence in her. But yes, it is very exciting. And certainly this is how I approach leadership in construction, as well as a principle-based approach.
Yeah.
Because if someone doesn't know the principle, then how do you get a strategy? If you don't have a strategy, we don't know what tools we need. If we don't know what tools we need, what are we actually going to do? So it is certainly that principle-based approach. And this is where the leadership most leadership discourse, it's always about the tactical, you need to inspire people, or you need to do this, but someone can't do this if in the first instance they haven't led themselves. They haven't taken unconventional action to solve problems for themselves, to invest in themselves, to lead themselves, to hold themselves to higher standards, to raise their own consciousness, to put themselves on a growth path. I mean, if you don't do that and you want to be a leader, think about the types of followers you're attracting. Those who are probably entitled, lazy, and don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
Is that what you truly want out of your, not you, Michael, but is that what people truly want out of their leadership function? So I've certainly started at the ground level. What are you doing first? And the first chapter is about vision. If someone doesn't have vision for themselves, where do I want to go? Then again, how can you possibly lead others?
Yeah.
But 9 out of 10 people that I speak to on calls, they don't have vision. I was on a call this week and someone says, I don't have any dreams. How is that possible? I mean, it was saddening to hear that someone has allowed themselves to be totally run over, that they don't even allow themselves to dream. So yes, that's certainly the inside out approach. Like everything that I do is from the inside out approach. In order to, if you are a leader, the book is for you. If you aspire to leadership, the book is also for you, because it takes that unconventional, that holistic approach in order to truly develop yourself into what I call a triple E leader, an exemplary, excellent, and exceptional one.
Wow. And thanks for sharing that. And I love that sort of concept, inside out. It's simple but powerful. And again, I was looking forward to this interview because I knew you'd share some amazing insights, and in a way there that people will be able to resonate that and really reflect where they are, how they're traveling, the things that they can do. So you've just given so much value, and I'm grateful for that.
And my pleasure.
And I look forward, as I said, I'll share that out, and I strongly recommend the book. I think it'll be amazing. I'm looking forward to the launch in 2 weeks.
Me too. It's when writing this book, I've truly learned, like the book process in itself, it's been a very different process to my first book. This one has taken me on an emotional, political roller coaster to some extent, and the production of this book from day one to March 11th when it's released has in itself taught me so many leadership lessons that, again, only experience can actually teach you. So I'm excited to finally get it out there. It's been a long time in writing and the making, but it's certainly that discourse around leadership which is missing in the construction industry.
Yeah. So thank you again. And as I said, I look forward to sharing this with the bigger community and sort of making that difference. So very inspiring. Thank you, Elinor.
Thank you very much, Michael.